Truth is that since it's fat soluble, you can't get it out of a person's system fast enough to see if there's withdrawal, because it's saturated into the fat. You can flush out water-based chemicals, and of course everybody knows about people that drink heavily and they quit. They have problems in withdrawal.
Right.
But that's water soluble. Fat soluble is different. It
Kind of
takes 30,
slow
60,
to
90 days
excrete.
to clean out a system for a heavy user. Well, that's for a nurse titrating off a drug in the system. Okay, there's not going to be any withdrawal. What you're really looking at is something much more powerful. It's the habituation. It's the mental part. You know, if you believe that you can't function without it, if that psychological benefit of smoking a joint to calm down is what you have to do to get through the day, and you quit, the normal anxiety that you feel the next day is going to push you back into it. You know, a lot of people,
is that a normal thing of coming somewhat down from marijuana, is an anxiety?
well,
Or
most
is
people-
anxiety an other condition that leads them to want to smoke?
It's both true.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, both true. Some people use marijuana to cope with anger problems,
whatever.
but some people develop anger problems because they have no coping skills because they smoked marijuana too many years. You know, I don't know which comes first,
Yeah.
but if you are smoking marijuana to calm down and you're not smoking it anymore, you're going to experience normal anxiety about what happens to you in life. If you have no coping skills, what choice do you have? It's going to be a horrible day. You know, you can't do anything else but smoke.
Yeah.
It's a perfect
I
setup.
I always equated it to having a friend, that if you didn't have your friend around, you kind of got down. You know, you weren't going to die, but it wasn't a very good day if you couldn't have your friend around.
Is a big part of your treatment then teaching people coping skills?
Yes.
What
it's
is
a very,
the hallmark of the treatment you give as a behavioral scientist
well,
or specialist?
we try to teach tools. Now,
Right,
you know, one of the things I know is I can't make anybody quit doing anything.
right.
You know, I learned that years ago.
Mhm.
But what I can do is say, here's another way of doing that. Try it and see if this way works better. You know, maybe it'll keep you out of prison or jail or out of the court system.
They
And
wanna
it'll do
hear
the same
that.
thing, yeah. And so the one thing that we all agree on in there is they don't want to be back in the court system. Okay, well, sometimes their way of doing that is, I'm gonna move out of state, I'm gonna move to Colorado or California where it's legal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, not sell to anybody that I don't know real well. They have all these short-term fixes without really addressing the problem. But if I can show them another way of handling relationships and problems and feelings and everything else, and get them to try it, at least while they're on probation and they know they can't or aren't supposed to drink or use, they might try it and it might start working for them, and then start new habits that they continue to do. And if once you get them into that point, it becomes self-rewarding. Kind of like the drug use, feels good. It feels good. I've got a lady that's building up a savings account for the first time in her life.
Wow.
You know, to have
Or my relationship's better than ever,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes to be out of a relation, not be dependent on, I've had women who their dates were always drug dealers because they always had drugs available for them. And one got out of that and felt so good about herself. You know, what she was able to do on her own, and her self-esteem just, exploded. You know, she's, wow, look what I can do. I own a car, I've got a job, I can do all this stuff,
A lot of positive perks to that.
Yeah, and it starts feeling good, and they look back at that and go, I can't believe I did that. That's somebody that's long in recovery. But, you've got to bump somebody out of that rut of thinking before they're just, I have to get through this and I can go back to drug use, I can go back to drinking.
Just put in my time and then I'm back. But you're hoping you can get some little piece of something, brighter light, hope of changing that can stick in the time you've got them.
Yeah, the whole issue, we're looking at, instead of saying you have to abstain, people say, oh, I can't do that, that's too hard. Say, okay, well, let's try a couple things that work. Harm reduction. Let's find some ways to cut down. Let's put limits on it. Let's at least get you stopped from using illegal drugs that get you busted, And then if they want to drink, it's like, okay, let's
So it isn't just the cold turkey. I thought that was the only option here. You might have to graduate them into full recovery.
Well, if they're getting UAs, they pretty much go cold turkey on
if they're
that.
getting that, they have to, right?
Yeah, but it's like working with them and saying, okay, if you want to be able to drink after you get off corrections, let's find a way to do that safely, because you have a worry about getting DUIs, drunk and disorderly, fights at the bar. You know, the little guy always picks a fight with the big guy at the bar. You know, you're not so big, you know. And how are you going to avoid the problems? You know, and they start looking at it. Sometimes they come up with decent plans. Other times they say, that's not going to work. You know, you know, say, I've never been able to drink and not, you know, get drunk. Okay, well, that's your decision. You know, if that doesn't work for you, then don't do it. You know, this is for you. And if they're doing it for them, sometimes their choices are different than if somebody is making them do it. There was a chaplain at St. John's 4th floor who used the term insistence resistance. You know, tell me to do something, you can't make me, it won't work. There's no way.
Yeah.
But if it's my idea, totally
aren't
different.
we all like that though?
Yes.
I mean, we've all learned that with multiple people. Matthew, we could sit and talk so much more, and I'd love to have you back sometime. A big thanks to my listeners for staying tuned in to the Joan Jerkovich Show here on 910 KINA. We're here with our second guest, and this is an addiction specialist here in Salina. We have a lot to talk about with her because there's always so much in the news that talks about addiction, especially with our celebrity news. I want to have a Salina opinion about the Michael Jackson, Conrad Murray trial and even Amy Winehouse, but just addictions in general. So welcome to Summer Rhodes, who works at Viridian Behavioral Health. Welcome.
Thank you.
So give me an idea, first of all, of your training and what an addiction specialist is and does.
Well, I'm a licensed addiction counselor, and in terms of my training, I'm also a master's level psychologist. In terms of the training that I've received for addictions, I'm also
Well, it is a subspecialty of counseling. Is that correct? Addictions, is it a subspecialty of counseling in a sense?
Yeah.
Or is it its own profession in a way?
BSRB just recently did the licensing for that in July, and so addictions counselors kind of got a little more professional in terms of how we are seen by the state and by the nation, which is kind of a neat thing for Kansas. So with training, they were required to have a bachelor's degree now, and the LAC, which I am, requires a master's degree. So.
Oh, so you have master's level preparedness, but I guess I'm sure with this extra recognition by the state, you're obviously recognized by insurance companies as well.
Yes,
for addiction treatment.
Yes, that is one of the things that's helpful as well.
So Summer, you know, you're here in Salina, and we're kind of doing a year-end special where we're kind of wanting to talk about New Year's resolutions. When we talked on the phone before you came in, you said, yes, New Year's is often a time that people something may have happened over the holidays, maybe family confronted some issues, that a lot of people do come in for and start to take a look at a new year and maybe tackling their addiction. Is that right?
Yes, that often happens, and I see a lot of people coming in wanting to make positive change after the holiday, and sometimes families also identify an issue that maybe has come to head because of the stress of the season and so forth, and so families sometimes bring their loved ones in and are wanting to get some help.
Now, since you said that, does that work? I mean, it's kind of like, are they drag them in kicking and screaming? Does that usually work? I always hear about the addict has to decide to do this for themselves.
It certainly works better if the addict has a personal desire to change, but sometimes those consequences from family that they notice that it's affecting the other person's life can be an aha moment. And so letting your family member know that gosh, this is something that really concerns me, and it's affecting my life as well, and I want you to take a look at this is a positive thing, I think.
So you're kind of giving a message, it sounds like, to tell families, go ahead and confront it, go ahead and speak up, and mostly I think tell them how it affects you personally, because when I watch those intervention shows on television, that seems to be what they do. They try to keep it about, this is how your addiction is hurting me and affecting affecting me, versus pointing a finger and being accusatory. Is that what you would suggest to family?
Yeah, I think that's a good approach, certainly, and the less confrontational, the better. Just sharing that, you know, this is a concern for me, and I want to see the best for you, and how can we help? How can we be of help? The other thing that's sometimes helpful for family members is to get involved with Al-Anon, and then also to receive maybe some counseling themselves, just to deal with ways to cope with people who are in their lives and have addiction issues. So
because even if the addict isn't willing to change, you might need support. You need, you know, somewhere to turn. So Al-Anon and other support systems are needed for the family members who are dealing with addiction.
yeah, they're very helpful. So.
Well, I do want to jump back to just getting an opinion, because, you know, people are always watching all the news shows about Conrad Murray's trial, and of course he's been convicted of involuntary manslaughter, I think it was, of Michael Jackson for, you know, supporting what I would say was a probably pretty serious addiction of his. We have Amy Winehouse. You're not necessarily going to have a celebrity of that caliber walk in your office, Summer, but what are the challenges of maybe dealing with an addiction for a celebrity, or just give us a commentary on celebrity addiction?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is about addiction is that it doesn't discriminate. So it hits those of us that are like Amy Winehouse and in the music industry, and it's certainly readily available. I think sometimes our playgrounds that we're in lead a little more to that. Yeah, it hits every possible socioeconomic status, and it unfortunately is deadly, and that doesn't discriminate either. So
do you believe, though, these celebrities have more of an opportunity to buy people to support their addiction, or buy even, you know, substances and such as that?
Yeah, sometimes financial resources are actually a negative when it comes
Yes.
to addiction, because yeah, it just sustains us a little longer, and so that's not a good thing.
So what is here in our community? Paint a scenario of what a common addicted person might walk in. Just kind of paint us a picture of what's happening in their lives, what's going on in some of their personal relationships, their jobs. Just paint us a picture.
Yeah, I think that those that come in with addiction are very similar to other people. They have life issues just like we all do, right? And sometimes it's just a way of coping. Sometimes it's just out of control. Sometimes the legal system has become involved, and so that's a consequence that leads sometimes people to come and get help. Sometimes the family has noticed that there's some things going on, and sometimes it's just an aha moment of, you know, I want my health to be a focus in my life. So similar to the New Year's resolutions, you know, sometimes, gosh, I just want to make some positive change in my life, and this isn't something that's benefiting me. So, yeah.
So how does an addiction grab hold? How does it get started?
Well, there's certainly some evidence to indicate that addiction is genetic, particularly in males. The evidence is very strong. There's a gene that was isolated, and also it's just a disease, and so it's not something that you necessarily sign up for. And we don't say, I want to have diabetes. It just is. I get it, and there it is. And the American Medical Association diagnosed or said that it was a disease back in the late 50s, early 60s, and certainly is similar, has all of the characteristics of a disease. It's primary, isn't due to something else. It's chronic, progressive, it gets worse, and certainly can be fatal. So it's yeah.
I think that's just a wonderful point that you make, because people who have so much shame associated with an addiction, but I totally believe what you say, that it's a disease, it's a genetic predisposition. I mean, I've certainly tried alcohol, and I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't think I ever could be, actually. It just doesn't interest me that much. Mm-hmm. So what is medical science doing for addiction? You're not a doctor to prescribe medications, but have we fallen short treating these people medically, since we are calling this a medical condition?
I do think that there have been some advances in that area. We have some antagonist medications.